there's a lot of things I think that companies could do, and they have to fork that over if they want people to get away from this remote lifestyle. That's at least what I'm seeing from my inner circle.
This is an awesome segue, because as you were talking, it's about passion. It's about having passion about what you do. If you're working in an environment where you're not pursuing your own passion, like as whatever that is for you, all these little things around like work circumstances and all that will seem even bigger. If you're pursuing your passion, and you do need to adapt to a few things you don't really like, it's a lot easier, you see.
Funny how.
Come here though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you? We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Awesome.
So I'm a mechanical engineer by background, and I wrote a book last year. So that's why I'm doing a little bit of a podcast conversation tour. The main reason why I wrote the book was because I had a long career in the energy sector, mainly in non-traditional fields for women. And 1 in 10, 1 in 12 was probably my batting average at the table. So I felt like I learned a lot over like 3 decades of doing that. And I felt like a lot of the people that were just starting their careers would learn a lot from what I had to share. So I thought, okay, how about we write a book and share and find a voice? I never was really involved, except when I was asked, about this diversity, inclusion conversation. I felt like it was a bit off for me to find my voice there, because it's almost like you're trying to justify why you should be at the table. Whereas it's much better when it comes from allyship, when other people say, hey, like so-and-so should be at the table. And that's true for any kind of diversity component at your table, whether you're a man or a woman. If you just happen to be a minority at the table, it's really good to have amplifying voices at the table to help you make sure that you're integrated and that you're welcome. So I decided to write a book, Us and Yet, and that's why I'm actually chatting with you today. My day job, though, is I'm working with the Strategic Decisions Group. We do decision consultancy for decision quality and for mainly large cap organizations. So we help elucidate what best approach to take on any given decisions that you would have to make. So that's kind of what we do on a day-to-day job. So we do mathematical modeling, etc. So it's quite engineering related still. And I'm really passionate about it. I love doing what I do. So, but that's my day job. And then my night job is just trying to promote some knowledge about what it means to work in a non-traditional field. So,
that's great. Well, especially I think right now too, the work field industry as a whole has changed so much, especially because of the pandemic. I feel like ever since 2020, people never got back to normal. It's like every single company and every single person shifted so much, and we've changed drastically. Not just like physically, not really going out as much anymore, because you realize being cooped up for a year straight, it actually wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? Like as long as you didn't have COVID, I mean, it was kind of cool. You're secluded. You get to watch every single show on Netflix. You don't have to go into work. I mean, it's like the European lifestyle. It's not bad.
Exactly.
So
but also,
changed.
I don't think we would be doing what we're doing right now in the same efficiency that we're doing right now had we not have COVID. So it's in some ways it was a blessing. And a lot of people have the ability to decide on working from home or traveling less because they can have efficient virtual meetings. All of these things were almost like we were due for it, but unless we were actually pushed to make a difference there, the technology wasn't evolving fast enough. And, so now we see we're pretty comfortable with teams and people, but it was like a whole etiquette. Remember, like we had to kind of figure out, okay, what is good and what is bad. And I, in my view, turning off your camera, unless you really have to, i.e. you're eating your lunch, it's always nice to have the camera on. But that's me.
Exactly. No, I'm the same way, especially as a podcast from a content creator. Face-to-face has always been better. I mean, I have a background in marketing and sales. And I was a manager at a couple Fortune 500 companies for over a decade. and not going face to face is so strange at first. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I think it was due. Probably if we didn't have the pandemic, I would imagine we'd be in the same situation in 2030. But because of the pandemic, these companies like Microsoft and Zoom, they really just put millions and millions of dollars into critiquing where we're at today. And obviously it's continuing, to evolve every single day. And it kind of makes you wonder, it's like, what is the workplace environment going to look like in 10 years? Do you find, because obviously you're talking to a lot of companies about how to properly, go through this workspace, do you find a lot of companies are kind of having issues, not just from the discrimination standpoint, but just as a whole, as a company, getting people in the office, communication? I mean, aside from virtual stuff, I mean, what's kind of the flow that you're dealing with when it comes to these companies?
It's a great question. By and large, I think people are adapting to the reality of the flexible work environment. It's flexibility now more so, and there's different studies right now that are coming out, whether it's like more efficient or less efficient to have people all in the office or all in the same spot. And there's something to be said about innovation probably being stifled just because you don't have the collision. I think it was Apple who had that big vision of creating these campuses where people would actually have an excuse to meet each other, and that created more innovation. So I think it's an and conversation. It's yes, we want to continue to have strong team environments where people are colliding and collaborating, and at the same time, you want to create enough flexibility that people could consider. If I have to stay home on one day, you just do that, and etc. So
that's right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. I kind of look at the same thing like. Something like universal healthcare, or, even just how a lot of other countries around the world, how they typically do like 4-day work weeks and things like that. You look at the pros and cons of each of that. It is very fascinating because it all boils down, I think, to society and what that culture is in that country. Because, if my wife and I last year, we went to Italy, and just being over in Europe in general, it's obviously a different beast. And there's a lot of pros and there are some cons, of course, just like everywhere else. But when you see the culture and when you see the people and the society as a whole and how they're functioning, it's obviously a lot different than America for a few reasons. The main one, I think, is, like you said, innovation, where they don't have that drive to innovate. And that's a big reason why a lot of these countries have not lived up to their full potential, right? And a lot of people come to America because they know, here, quote unquote, the American dream, you could do a lot, you can innovate, you can do all these different things, hop into STEM, do whatever you want to do, really, in America, versus in other countries, necessarily you can't do that. And it's fascinating when you go to these countries because it's not that they're not aware of that. Like, they could easily flip a switch, but they're choosing the slow route. They're choosing the Italian way of just, let's sip on our espresso, let's take our time with dinner, let's drink wine every day. Like, they don't care about, we want to be number one on the moon. Like, this is not on their radar, right? And it's fascinating when you see that side of things.
It's like the Dolce Vita. Is that the way we describe
Dolce
it?
Vita. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Or like in, I think is it Costa Rica, or they say, we were there on our honeymoon. What did it say? Oh, Pura Vida, I think too is.
Oh, Pura Vida.
Pura Vida, yeah. So my wife tells me that all the time. She's Hispanic. She's like, just Pura. Every time she's like, should I buy this? I'm like, no. She's like, come on, Pura Vida. I'm like, oh, that's not what that means. But yeah, are you finding that a lot of companies are kind of adapting to more of these, I don't want to say remote positions, but as you said, they're a little bit more open-minded to it. But has there been any like talks in the companies that you've talked about, like 4-day work weeks, working less hours, and it's producing more? Because I've been reading a lot of studies on that, and that's really interesting to me too.
I don't have lots of stats on that myself personally. I haven't really pursued like an equation around that. But what I could observe is that people are surprisingly moving back to a workplace environment, more so than a remote environment, unless it's necessary for you to be remote.
Sure.
I'm surprised of that, but there's lots of large organizations feeling like they want to see people come in the office, whether it's like 4 or 5 days a week. But the 2 days a week is very rare nowadays. Like the people that have the ability to say, hey, 2 out of 5 days, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to go to the office. The other 3, I'm going to stay home or work remotely. So, but we do see everywhere. I travel quite a bit, and we do see in large centers lots of good remote offices set up. So you can actually rent, a room, and you can quickly, so there's a lot more flexibility there, which we didn't have before.
Yeah, very true. And it's like my wife, she works from home, but they used to be 5 days a week, and now they've kind of transitioned to they're popping in once a month now. And we have a daughter that just turned 2, and we keep having this conversation because eventually they'll probably say, all right, guys, enough's enough, 5 days a week now. And then it comes to the position of, okay, well, if we do that, so now we're going to spend money on childcare because I'm stay at home working as well, and I'm remote and I can't do everything myself like we do everything in shifts. So, how do you navigate that? And I think a lot of families too are starting to think more about that, to where I don't necessarily think if you ask 100 people, I don't think it's that they don't want to go into work. I just think they're starting to realize that 8 to 5 is causing more issues than not. Meaning maybe the company's not paying them enough. Maybe their healthcare sucks. Maybe they have people there that, they're not getting treated well, maybe at work. So it's like you're spending all this time at a company that it doesn't necessarily have the qualities that maybe you want from a job. So because of that, there's not enough pros to outweigh those cons. And I think companies in general, I could just speak for the companies that I used to work for before I owned my own company, but they did not value their employees. And it was a big Fortune 500 company. Healthcare was great. They would do incentives and trips and all that. And they try to spice you up with that type of stuff. But when it comes to you being in the office and them harping down on quotas and they're not treating you good and like all these little things, I think human beings were starting to get a little bit more like, I don't want to say cocky, but we're almost like, hold on, I know my worth. If you're not going to treat me that way, then I'm not going to want to go into the office. I'll just find something new. And a lot of friends that I talk to that are now unemployed and they're looking for work, which is very difficult to do. A lot of companies are starting to kind of adapt into that workplace environment, which I think is great, but they got to have a big incentive. Maybe you're getting paid more. Maybe, there's some companies that are covering childcare costs. Like there's a lot of things I think that companies could do, and they have to fork that over if they want people to get away from this remote lifestyle. That's at least what I'm seeing from my inner circle.
This is an awesome segue because as you were talking, it's about passion. It's about having passion about what you do. And if you're working in an environment where you're not pursuing your own passion, like as whatever that is for you, then all these little things around like work circumstances and all that will seem even bigger. If you're pursuing your passion, and you do need to adapt to a few things you don't really like, it's a lot easier, you see. So my book, the reason why I wrote it is I felt like so many people were ramping off their passion. They go and study for 4 years if you do an undergrad, or 6, 7 years, sometimes 8 years. And then you get educated, you start working, and then all the circumstances we're just talking about, which is maybe I don't have the right childcare, maybe I don't have the right, it's too far from my home, or all these different logistics that will come and throw you off in your path to pursuing your passion. They're going to come and show up. And especially in the childbearing years, like it's going to be very difficult because you're going to have some help. And then all of a sudden you wake up and the nanny that you hired just doesn't work for you. And then you have to find a new one. And there's all these things that will actually throw you off and say, oh, wouldn't it be much easier if I just stayed home? Then you stay home because, and you make that decision jointly with your partner. So your life partner and you, whether you're the one staying at home or you're partner is staying at home, really you're making that decision together. So
That's
how
right.
do we actually enable our couples to make better decision around their passion, pursuing their passion, whatever that is, and not ramp off from all the education and things that they might have grown own skills in, instead of continuing to contribute to the society while pursuing these skills and passions that you have, you decide to take a different path just because you don't have the help and support that you need. So for me, in my book, when I said, find the help that you need, I put the in big letters. And the reason for that is not everyone will need the same thing. Like we're all going to have different needs to feel comfortable pursuing whatever your career passion is. And every step of the way, you need to start assessing what needs you have and try to fill that gap so you don't ramp off. And sometimes there'll be like really early signs of, I shared a life experience. I was pregnant with my first child. So kind of a new mom figuring out what needs to be done. So I'm with my spouse. We go to visit this daycare or child, I don't know how they call it.
Right.
It's so young, but yeah. So we go and visit a place where they would take young infants. And I'm 6 months pregnant. So like I'm about 3 months away from giving birth, and then another 3 months because I was going to take about 10 weeks after the birth. I'm about 6 months away from needing the help. And I walk in and she looks at me like I'm an alien. I'm so late at the table. And I'm like, I don't need your help for 6 months. Like, when did you want me to come in? Before I even thought I wanted to have a child or something? Or I didn't even tell my parents, like 3 months into the pregnancy, I found out. And I told my parents. So I had, spoken to my parents about having a child about 8 weeks before that. And then all of a sudden it was like way too late for me to find the help that I needed when I wanted to go back to work. So this is kind of a little story, but it's one that I could have said, well, forget this. I'm not getting the kind of support that I need. So one of us will have to stay home. And we kept on working and we ended up, finding our own help. And it lasted for a while. And then eventually that help didn't work out. So we had to kind of move to a different situation. But really as a couple to make decisions that are informed by all the things that are available to you, and really work hard, because sometimes it's not easy to find exactly what you need. But if you do find help and it doesn't provide you the help that you need, then you need to keep looking. And that's kind of my message in there. And for all the parents and even later in life, like when you don't have children anymore at home, you will still need some support to continue pursuing what you want to do. And you might make some suboptimal decision if you don't have that help. So.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, and I think especially as we get older, we're a little bit more aware that we need to start making these decisions. I wish personally that I had kind of a bigger drive in my 20s and 30s to pursue my passion more. I did it first when I was 18, 19, 20, but sometimes your passion doesn't necessarily align with your financial goals. So you have to pivot, and then the hope is, oh, don't worry, I'll get back and I'll do that. I'll paint that painting, or I'll, focus on opening this business or that bit. And then eventually, next thing you know, you're 7 years old and you're collecting a 401k from a company you've been with at 30 years. So it's definitely one of those things. I think as we get older, I just turned 40, and now more than ever, I know my passion. Like I didn't know my passion in my 20s and 30s. I thought I did. You always think you do, right? But then now here I am. I'm older. I'm the dad now, and I realized I know exactly what I want to do, and that might change in 10 years. So I think the ability to adapt and to move and to change is important as well. But for people that maybe are out there and they're not really sure how to pursue their passion, what do you think is a couple tips that maybe you can give them to get the ball rolling?
Well, the first one is find the help you need. The second one is plan it as a partner. And I talk more in the construct of a couple, but obviously you could be on your own and needing to go through the same thing. But usually when you plan what is needed for you to be able to execute on, the 3-6 months a year plan. I have kind of a pretty detailed schedule in one of the chapters where I say, okay,
Nice.
This is what constitutes a short-term planning, and this is what constitutes the kind of medium-term planning, the 6 months-ish to 18 months. And then you have the long-term planning, which is like, where do I want to be 5-10 years from now? So it's kind of that frame. And then in each segment, you can actually focus on what are the key elements that I need in this period, or what are the building blocks that I need to actually either find or build myself that would actually yield positive outcome on the path towards where I want to go. So this is kind of, in a high level what you want to do. But I do think that we underestimate the superpower of the 18 months window. This is a window where you have the ability to adapt. You were talking about adaptive work earlier. I think you need to think about adaptability and resilience. And the 6 to 8 months window is the perfect window to make changes today and not have a whole bunch of things that throw you off that path in 6 to 18 months. But if you try to make too many changes in your 0 to 6 months period, it might cost you money. It might cause you delay. You might not have the supply chain that you need. All the things that could come in and throw you off if you don't execute as per plan in the 0 to 6 months. So my recommendation is keep steady in the 0 to 6 months, because you've planned it way back then. And the 6 months to 18 months is the favorite time to do optimization, think about what you need, order what you need, set it up. And then by the time 6 months come, you're ready to execute, and then you don't waste resources or time. So that's a really good way. The other part about that is you can dream, and that's, I know you're big into visualization and meditation and things like that. Well, this is the perfect window to think about, where do I want to be in 6 months? Because it's almost tangible enough that you can actually put pictures out there in your brain. It's not so far like 10 years, and it's good to do long-term thinking as well. But that 6 to 18 months is much easier for people. It seems more tangible because, like, I don't know, maybe you're in the house that you think you're going to be in 6 months. So you're in this house. So where do I want to do things? So the circumstance is probably not as foreign as where you will be in 10 years. So it's a bit easier for you to think about. But then you do need to have a conversation with your significant other on where do you want to be in 10 years. So then he or she can come in and support you in that. And by knowing that, they could be on the lookout for you as well. So you have like two brains on the lookout for what is needed. So I do think there's a lot of conversations to be had. So my first one is find the help you need. And the second one is communicate and plan with yourself, if you're by yourself, or with your spouse about these different timeframes, and treat them very distinctly, because you can't do the same thing in all of them equally. There's probably, so I worked in integrated planning for quite a few years. I had that group reporting to me for a while, and the 6 to 18 months was the place where the magic could happen. And most of the time in the business world, people do like a 1 year budget, and then they do a long-term forecast, but they don't really do they do like a 30-month plan, 30 days, 60 days, or 30 days, 90 day. And then they leave it to the long-term forecast. But then if you focus on, it's a big gap. Yeah. So there's something in between. The near term is the magic, because you have enough time to make changes, but you don't, and not throw your whole plan off, or, create inefficiencies. But then it's tangible enough that you know where you're going, and you can actually steer, slightly do small adjustments. And win in that space. So 6 to 18 months, my favorite. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, because I think that is where the magic happens. That's a great point. Never looked at it like that. I think, typically I plan, I do the same thing as I usually do like quarters. So I'll do like every 3 months I'll plan, but usually I'll have like this time next year, but then every 3 months I plan on what to do. And then every week I plan my things to do. I'm a little bit psychotic when it comes to certain things because like I do this, this fun practice I've been trying to get my wife to do, but she's not about it. She's not really forward thinking when it comes to a lot of stuff, which is why we work, because I am and she's not, and we don't really butt heads a lot with that stuff. She's like, hey, you do what you want to do, and I'll do. Okay, all right, cool. So it works out well.
You do your thing, and I do my thing.
That's it. Yeah, like there's certain things, especially when it comes to parenting, as you probably know, there is responsibilities that are up to each person. At least in our house, we switch responsibilities here and there, but like I make a point, I need to change more diapers than her. Like I make it a point to do that. And with her, she does not allow me to do the dishes because she doesn't like how I do the dishes. So how I stack the dishwasher is not good enough for her. So she needs to do that. So we realize over the course of time, I'm never going to do the dishes because you want to do it. And then she doesn't need to change diapers because she knows I'm going to do it. And I was like, she carried her for 9 months. So it's the least I could do is change more diapers than her. But there is this one thing that I do that I think a lot of listeners would appreciate, is every Friday I'll do, we talk about like short-term thing and long-term thing. Every Friday I write out what I need to do next week. So like I literally have a whiteboard, and every Friday after work, 5 p.m., so I'll do this tomorrow. So I'll write out Monday I need to do this, Tuesday I need to do this, Wednesday I need to do this, Thursday. Because I realized that if I'm not long-term planning, the short-term plan that I do, I get two in my head. And I don't know if people could relate to this, but like when I plan 3 months out, if it's things that I end up wanting to do things earlier, or I end up pushing things away. So I kind of condensed, if I had like 100 things I needed to do in 3 months, I condensed them into like time blocks almost, where it's 3 to 5 things I do each week. And that will lead to completing all 100 of those things. And sometimes it's easier for me to think short term like that. But in the back end of my brain, I'm planned out like every month for the next 12 months and then 10 years. But it's like I need to like focus on these little things because I get so caught up in my own thoughts sometimes, and it keeps me up when I don't do that. It took me a lot of years to figure that out, but that's just what works for me.
And the division of tasks at home is a key one, I think, for couples considering their dual careers or pursuing their passions separately and parallel. You do need to have that communication where some of it you should pick the things in your household duty. And they say there's a lot of household duties that are not actual physical duty, they're mental load. Like, who's going to be planning the next doctor appointment or whatever it is, like next maintenance. So there's a lot of the mental load that is attributable to household duties, not just like physical activities, but to have that conversation about you've got this, I've got this, or these things we're going to do together is super healthy for couples. And it seemed to be much better and when the couples are actually communicating with each other about these things than when you actually just leave it to chance or to whatever falls into the lap of someone, because then you don't have a true recognition of maybe what the other person is doing and relative to how much you're actually contributing to. So, and it's super important for dual working couples to have that clear conversation, but it doesn't mean that you're not flexible either, and that you're not going to pick up, if you have a big party, that you're not going to do some dishes, or, similarly that, if she's traveling with a baby, that she's not going to change the diaper. Like, yeah, exactly. I think you need to be flexible, and that's the beauty of it. But yeah, absolutely.
That's such a great point. Yeah. I think, planning, especially as we've noticed with work, the mental load, I think, is the big thing. If, like, physically, if you can get past to, you don't need to vacuum every day like maybe you want. If you can just kind of put all the cleaning crap aside, because that's obviously the physical part, The mental part, to me, what I've realized is that's way more valuable. If you can figure out a way, because I'm in charge of all the bills and all that, because I like it. I like spreadsheets, and I'm a geek. So my wife does not like that. So she knows anything to do with finances. We talk about it, but I track everything and we go over it. To like planning a trip, I go over. So she just dumps money in the savings account and I just kind of like move it around and we got to do it. But I think those little things of, imagine the stress that we would both feel if like we're both worried about finances, or maybe we're both worried about those doctor's appointments, because that's a good one too with the kids. Like the wife does all that. She does all the doctor's appointments and the visits and all that. So like if something goes down, she throws in the calendar and I'm like, what the hell is this? She's like, oh, it's just a 2-year checkup. Like, all right, great, whatever. So she booked. So now I have to work around that schedule, but it's great because I cannot do everything and she cannot do everything. And I think really that mental load is the big thing. A lot of people ask me when we have these conversations with other couples, they're like, how do you guys like plan all that? And I go, well, first it's talking, figuring out, a lot of trial and error. We've been together over 10 years and we've made a ton of mistakes on what to do and what not to do. But then I think the big thing is just the mental load that you have on other things is, I think, where people get caught up on. Like that's a big thing that I've noticed in the workplace, is when you're thinking about other things outside of work, you can't focus on work. So ipso facto, if you're thinking about XYZ, you can't focus on ABC. Like you have to figure out, you only have a certain amount of space in your brain to carry information, and you have to do it. So you might not be able to memorize the Stepper, you might not be able to memorize the, Atlanta Housewives or whatever episode. So you have to forget about that and you got to focus on something more important. But the people that have the same conversations with, how do you make time to do this? I go, did you see the last episode of Love is Blind? They go, yeah. I go, I didn't. Because while you're watching that for an hour, this is what I do. I plan and I do things. And that's not easy to hear, because Love is Blind is a good show. I get it. But there's things you have to kind of decide in life, especially as you get older. Now that I'm 40, it's like my time that's more important than money. It's very valuable.
And it has to be intentional. Like, what you're doing there is intentionally moving your brain power away from watching a show to something that you want to pursue. And similarly, when you're in a household environment, like, you need to be intentional about the fact that, hey, my problem is I love what I do from a work perspective. So sometimes I'll get like really deep into certain subjects, and I get so deep that I forget all the other requirements. So, my spouse will come home and I will not have done all the things that I should have done because I spent way too much time going deep into something that, I was all passionate about. So you do need to be intentional. So on some days I'm going to say, okay, yeah, after an hour and a half of this, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go and do whatever I need to do. So, but it has to be intentional because it's easy time sap. And probably similarly with all these, I would call it noise that we have in our environment. Like, what is it? YouTube. Yeah. Are we on YouTube right now?
Yes. We are going to be on YouTube. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You're right. There is so much noise out there. And, I want to preface by saying I love streaming. I love TV. I love watching video. I like kind of binging and I like relaxing, because a lot of studies are showing that if you watch the same movies over and over, it actually relieves a lot of your anxiety. These are for anxious people. So there is a lot of benefits to it, obviously. However,
all things in balance.
Exactly. Well said. All things in balance. Because I think that's the main thing that people are stressed out about, is there's so much cool stuff going on YouTube and TikTok and all the stuff. It's fascinating and it's great and it's funny and you're going to laugh, but you also got like shit you got to do. And, if you want to live where you're living and you want to have the car that you want, and that's another thing that I start thinking about a little bit more, is like, what do I really want? We talk about a 5 or 10 year plan. Like when I'm planning things out, I think about that environment. You mentioned it earlier about kind of putting yourself in that house. Well, I envision us like 10 years from now in Italy. That's where I envision us. And even before, because my, part of my family is Italian. So like even before we went to Italy, I was convinced that was going to be the end game. Then I go and I'm like, that's the end game. Done deal. It's happening. And I think about this stuff because over there, I don't want a car, a nice house. I just want land. I want to do my own work. I want to have my own farm that I could do things. And you just can't have that in America, unfortunately. It's just not feasible. Like the average household in Florida, where I'm at, is almost $500,000. That's crazy. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. So that means you need to work like 80 hours a week just to break even. That's insane. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that means you can't go out to dinner. So you have to buy expensive groceries, which we have here in America. So you kind of have to weigh out the pros and cons. And I think with America 20, 30 years ago, people had a different mindset when it comes to work and all that, because like you said, they weren't following their passion. But now people can actually follow their passion, do what they want, and then have the end game of living somewhere else or going to this different country or traveling more, whatever you want to do, being single forever and backpacking through Europe. Like there's a lot of things you can do if you follow your passion, because I think, if I could button up everything, correct me if I'm wrong, but following your passion leads to not just mentally you're more at peace, but your work benefits as well. Because if you have 100 people in your workplace and 98 of them hate what they do, you have a shitty company. You're not profiting as much as you could. Now, if you could find 98 people that love what they do, but there's 2 people that kind of hate it, that's okay, because that 98% of people love what they do. Yeah, they come in, they're passionate, they're excited. Now you're going to have a profitable company, and you got to create a good work environment, step 1. But step 2 is finding the people that not necessarily are always qualified, because just because you're qualified, you have a degree, that person might not like that degree. That's very common. Mm-hmm. Not everyone could be, obviously, in your situation where you're pursuing what you do at work and on the side. That's a rare thing.
Yeah. Well, the side thing was really to help people out. I felt like my last line in the book is over to you, because I did feel like I wasn't seeing myself as an author in any shape or form. But I was seeing, as I said, too many people ramping off and not getting the help they needed early enough when they were seeing signs that, hey, they needed to deal with things a little bit differently. I saw lots of marriages fall apart because people were in circumstances where they were pursuing their passion or not. And sometimes the not, you talk about happiness, it doesn't really show up in the first year. It doesn't show up in the second year, but 10 years down the road, when you've sacrificed something that you had significantly invested in, then all of a sudden there's all these distortions that happen in the couple when one of the two would decide to stop, pursuing whatever their passion is. So that's very important to think through, not just for the near term, but also for the long term, what the implications of the decisions you're making would be. So my side gig is about helping couples figuring out how they can, but it's also about individuals figuring out how they can navigate a non-traditional career successfully. So I kind of give some tips on where are the places where you need to look for biases? How do you actually communicate if you're a certain gender? So I have a big portion of my book about archetype, finding your superpower in your own archetype. So what are you about, and how can you actually show up in the world in a way that is going to be well received, and these kind of things. So to help out, but at the end of the day, it was over to you, because I feel like everyone has their own journey. And we're all learning along the way. I'm still learning. So I'm learning from others who are discovering things that I didn't know. Yeah. And then they share it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I know this. Now I can, I find whenever I learn something, if I know, I cannot unsee it. It's almost like once you realize something, you kind of say, wow, I can't not see that anymore, because I know now. So it's a little bit like that. So hoping that some people get the aha moment. Oh, I didn't know. And then all of a sudden they have a little bit of an easier time navigating whatever they're navigating in their life. So that was kind of my objective. So the side gig is really to help people, and that's why I'm doing these chats. So gets the messages get exposed to a bigger audience.
Yeah, listen, I think what you're doing is very valuable, and it sounds great. So I'm excited that you came on, because I learned a lot too, and I think the viewers will get some value out of this too. But where can they find the book? Where can they find you on social media if they want to know more?
So www.usandyet.com is the website, and you can find it on Amazon or Ingram Spark, wherever. And nice. The book is Us and Yet and Yet. Oh, I don't think you saw it.
Yeah, there it is.
And yet, I don't know, it's hard to tell. Yeah, so Us and Yet, and it's my favorite AQ. That's why I had it's the world of do, a world of do. It is indeed, and yet, and it's Kobayashi Issa, one of the Japanese Heikyu, I guess, well-known historical Heikyu writer, and when I read that, I thought, okay, what is the world that we want to create? What is the world I want to create? And it was about thinking through, how do we interact with each other? How do we actually support and lean on each other? And what are the possibilities? So that was kind of the ideas of the and yet is there's so much more that we can do to help each other out. So how do we figure this out together? And this was what the book was about, is us. But what can we do together? And yet we're not quite there yet. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah, it's true. We're always improving. And yet. Yeah, that's great. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for the time. I can't believe we're at an hour already. That's crazy. But thank you for the time. And if you can, do you have social media at all where people could follow you? Or?
Yeah, I'm. It's Us and Yet. You just look on social media, you'll see it.
Thank you so much for the time. This was a blast.
Enjoy Florida.
Thank you so much.